Hey, well, thanks for joining us on this episode. And today, I'm your host, Eric Marquez. I'm the pastor of New Life Community Church in Homer Glen. I got Pastor John Palmieri from New Life Elgin.
Great to be here today with you guys.
And talk to us who we got with us today in the studio.
We have two special guests. I'm going to go with Vilma Arguelles first. She's the lady in the group here. She's the only lady here in this group, so we're going to have her go first.
And I'm really happy that we have her on mic and video. This is quite a special treat for anybody who knows Vilma. So.
Right, and we had to give her M&Ms to get her here today.
Green ones.
But she's here. Hey, it's great to have Vilma with us, and as you know, we're talking through restarts, and Vilma has a lot of experience in that. As a matter of fact, Vilma, for years, was our restart launch coordinator, and she did a lot. She was pretty much the only one that played a big part in working through the event itself leading up to the grand opening, and we'll get into that a little bit more. And today she's moved on to bigger and better adventures, but we still pull her in for advice and consulting her because she has so much experience in the restart realm. Yeah. And then we have our one and only beloved Kent Richardson.
Roll,
man. And it's great to have Kent here as our Director of Communications plus. And he is playing more and more of a role in our restarts and helping us get some uniformity in how we launch those out, higher quality on different things. And so he plays a big role. Both of these folks play a huge role in our central services team, and we're so grateful that you guys took time out today to be with us on this podcast.
Welcome, guys.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we're talking about all things restarts, and we've had in other episodes, we've had testimonies from the location pastor. We had an interview with Chuck McWhorter, who was from the church that was inviting New Life in to do a restart. And today we wanted to talk about the power of a central service. If you're thinking about being a church that does restarts in your community, we cannot emphasize enough what this team does. And so that's why we have Vilma and Kent on the episode today. And so we're going to be talking about the power of a central service, or a team, really, right, is what we're talking about. So to kick things off, Kent, Vilma, how many restarts have you guys been a part of? I think altogether New Life's at what numbers as far as restarts? How many restarts
We're
have you
at
done?
about the 15
mark, right?
Yeah.
And so out of those 15, Vilma, how many have you done?
15.
15.
15 from 15.
Jeez.
15.
There you go. What about you, Kent?
Yeah, I started a little bit later. I'm about 6 restarts in.
6. All right. So, I mean, that is a ton of experience. I remember, Vilma, when I was in church, growing up, I was on your sound team. So
Yes.
that's how
The tech team.
She was kind of like a mentor to me. Taught me how to do how to roll cables, how to be a snake boy, right?
There you
Just run the snake.
Snake
And
man,
right. And
Yeah.
so it's good to have you here. And but you've been involved in these restarts, and they've evolved over the years, I would say, right?
Yes, they have.
John mentioned that you were solo in the beginning years. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about, because we didn't call it Central Service, so what do we call it?
No, we called it whatever Pastor Mark kind of gave us. Team.
The team.
The team. We were the team. Yes.
The team.
Made up of about 4 or 5 of us type thing. I don't know if we really understood the vastness of a restart and what that meant.
Right.
What was the team back then? What roles were they? And then maybe, Kent, you can talk about what the roles are currently.
Boy, my role was kind of all rolled up into one. So my job was to do the actual event, so the day of, the agenda. So it was working with the pastor, also working on the AV piece of this thing, since I have an AV background, and also the postcards, and learning how to do demographics in those areas, and kind of working with the pastor and kind of giving them guidance on how to be able to pick a nice postcard for that area.
And then who were the other people on the team, and what did they do?
Back then, it was Pastor Mark took on a lot of it. I mean, he was the guy that did everything.
That's because Pastor John taught him how to do it, right?
Yeah,
Mentored
so
him.
Pastor
Right,
so
praise God. Proud of that young man.
yes, yeah,
And now he's the president of Moody.
Man, thank you, man.
he came out pretty good, didn't he?
You're welcome, world.
But yeah, it was. I think Dan Druby was on the team as a financial guy, and so Pastor Mark, Dan Druby, myself, and John was in this mix somewhere along the way.
Pretty soon in 2001 is
Yeah.
you were on the first restart
Right,
team,
which was Chuck McWhorter's, right,
New
New Life Lakeview. So that was to me, it was exciting of an opportunity that God had given us. I don't think as a church we ever would have imagined helping another church to be a restart.
Yeah.
And then we didn't really know what that meant, so we went in and folks back then were obviously seniors and they were trying to figure things out. And instead of closing the doors, they wanted to pass along the church to a younger generation.
And you guys didn't call it restarts back then,
No,
right?
we didn't. What
Yeah.
did we call it? It's been a while.
It was kind of more like we didn't really have an official title. It was like, hey, we're
No.
teaming up together to
Yeah, partner,
No.
collaboration.
on
We're just
the
gonna
on the
help.
mission on the mission. You remember at Lakeview Central Services office was right there. It
That is
wasn't
correct.
down here.
That's
And
correct,
Isn't that crazy to think of that?
Yeah,
so
our offices had to
We're in
move.
Lakeview, so when we merged with Lakeview, maybe we called it a merge at that time. We
Yeah.
like Restart Better.
Yeah.
It carries a better theology representation there, but. Central Services was in that little narrow office.
You're right. You're right. All of us were able to manage to fit in there. Linda Wasso was a big piece of this thing as well.
Yeah,
Linda,
absolutely.
Kind of
yes.
thing. So it was really neat. It was just a really neat opportunity to be able to meet folks that had walked the journey a lot longer than we had, and to be able to hear their stories and the folks that had gotten saved and the things that God did in that. And so seeing Chuck was like amazing. I mean, he was just like this fireball, him and CB and the rest of the team that was up there and stuff. So it was pretty neat.
So we started with Lakeview, and then we moved what we would call our Central Service team was actually meeting there. And now today, Central Service meets in is stationed at the New Life Midway location.
Right.
Kent, talk to us about what Central Service looks like today, 2021.
Yeah, so today our team's grown. So Central Services, it includes finance, HR, IT, and communications. Those are kind of our four, departments, if you will. Small departments, but those are the kind of four pieces that come together and help the pastor kind of navigate the restart journey, I guess you could say.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. From the beginning till now. And again, this is we want to talk about the innovation of this team, but ultimately the team serves the pastor, right? The location pastor to restart a location, which I think is pretty cool because the power of this team, it leverages maybe some of the weaknesses that location pastors have, like I don't necessarily want to be making postcards, right? Or designing them or picking fonts and colors and, but some people have a really good eye for that, or even dealing with legal matters. I don't know about you, but sometimes, man, that's just stuff that type of thing just overwhelms a person, right?
Yeah.
And the power of this team. So, what role does Central Service play in helping a restart specifically? I mean, you guys do a lot of other things for all of New Life, but when it comes to restart specifically, what role does Central Service play?
Yeah, I mean, it's primarily a support role and a lot of admin work, a lot of behind-the-scenes work. But like you're saying, Pastor Eric, our goal is to take a lot of that off of the pastor's plate so that they can do what they do best, and that's pastoring, that's loving people, that's caring for people. Pastor John and I were talking, a little bit before this about, restarts it's a spiritual work, right? And so there's a lot of things that have to happen behind the scenes and things that have to be ordered and set up and planned, but at the end of the day, it's a spiritual work that God's doing in the hearts of the people and the congregation and the community, and so we want to free the pastor up to be able to lead and guide and shepherd the people. So the more we can help them with, the better. And each pastor is a little bit unique. We play to their strengths. Some pastors do have a little bit more admin gifting in them, and so they are able to run with things and move things forward.
Are you thankful for that when they're like that, when they have that kind of strength, or is it a double-edged sword?
It is a little bit of a double-edged sword. Sometimes there's a little bit of some clashing there. Like, hey,
I got my own ideas.
We got a plan here, but they want to, So yeah, it's a little bit of navigating that.
some of
But
those.
our team, we kind of come around them. We fill in, the gaps. We support. We back them up. Really. So help them to not make the same mistakes again. We've learned a lot over with each one, and we get better and better. So they don't.
I would say a big part too, and you kind of mentioned this earlier, as far as being a restart launch coordinator. when we do a restart, there is a kind of a grand opening of this location under the new name, New Life Community Church, even though they probably have been meeting for months beforehand, right? But there's this date where we're publicly coming out, and that's a big part of what you guys help a pastor work up to, right?
Right.
As well as the legal fees. If there's a building involved, right? Our team would deal with that. We have a team. We have lawyers. We have people that work in the background. And we mentioned like a constitution. John, you want to talk briefly just about that?
Yeah,
really quickly?
Central Services does a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And when you think about Central Services, just think in terms of like an army that's fully equipped with everything that we need, a supply line that's kind of just waiting. It's like a dam, okay, that's ready to break. They're just waiting until when the ink dries on and the pastor's done all the spiritual work and prayer and investment and relationship building that's led up to the point of the agreement being signed. And once the ink is dried on that agreement, it's like, okay, Central Services, and the gates open and boom, all kinds of things happen. Things like this. They will navigate through the Constitution of both churches. So you have a New Life has a constitution. The church is going to do a restart has a constitution, and they'll help navigate that, of course, with the help of experts like lawyers. They'll help navigate that to make sure that we're following all the requirements, and all the requirements are being met, so that it's done in the right way. And it's a little unique with New Life because we don't fully follow lawyers' advice, which is to tell us to shut down the restart location and start brand new as New Life. No, we keep that entity in existence because we philosophically believe that it's the work of God, and the work of God doesn't stop; it just continues on. So in the midst of this God activity, we are keeping this location going, and so it still exists as a location, but it's now got the name New Life, and it's in the New Life chapter, so to speak.
Yeah.
Okay, so that the navigating of the Constitution, but also communicating with lawyers on contractual kind of concepts and that kind of thing.
Because all that stuff has to happen, right? And
it's kind of the underbelly of all the different things that have to happen to make it work. And what's nice is that the location pastor of that particular restart that's coming from New Life doesn't have to worry about all that stuff.
Yeah.
He's aware of it, and he's getting reports and so forth from Central Services, but Central Services is carrying the bulk of the responsibility, the bulk of the weight, and that does, like Kent was saying, helps free up that pastor to be able to shepherd people, get small groups going, get his worship team up and running, build teams, all the things that a restart needs. And the last thing the pastor, in our perspective, needs is to be worrying about all this admin and talking to lawyers.
We'll talk about that just for a brief second. And me and you are both location pastors. And man, when stuff, with your location, whether it's relational or financial or anything, man, that type of stuff can keep you up at night,
Sure can.
And so the power of a central service team, that comes in and we can leverage somebody else's skill set who's knowledgeable and skilled in that area, so that I don't have to expose myself for not being skilled in that area, right? And we work together, right?
That's right. We work together.
I sleep a lot better knowing Kent's there.
I know. If it fails and falls apart, it's all Kent's fault.
All Kent's fault. Yeah.
It's all. No. But and there's a lot of other things too. Just so when we go into a restart, there's all kinds of different contractors that'll be coming in and vendors that'll be doing painting and carpentry and you name it. Yeah. And so all those bills that are coming rolling in, the pastor's not, at the end of a hard, long day of navigating through people that are scared because it's a restart and all the different question marks. Yeah. Now he's got, at the end of the day, a big pile of paper that he's got to walk through and figure out who to pay all the bills. And he's got contractors he's seen face. Hey, that stuff's all being taken care of. And it's fairly stunning, to be honest with you.
It really is.
That a church, I came from the business world. I've seen companies that were on the edge of going to the next level of 200 units out in the restaurant business, 200 units, and maybe they were at 100, but they're going to take the next leap of how unorganized they really are to go to that multi-level or multi-site or multi-location restaurants. And to see how unorganized at that particular point and how they have to grow and stretch through it. To think that a church of God, this isn't some kind of like hokey poke, unorganized thing. I'm super impressed with how New Life has grown over the years and become organized. Now, we're not perfect, But we do really equip that pastor and that congregation to be able to navigate through things so that their work is really, all work is spiritual work, but that their work is really emphasized on people.
Right.
And making disciples, and so they handle all the contractors, they handle that
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Accounts payable, accounts receivable, right?
All the insurance requirements, bill paying procedures.
Yeah. Like I don't get a light bill at my location. I don't get that bill. Doesn't come across my
Right.
desk, and
But you do get a budget
Yep.
that illuminates you, pun intended, illuminates you to how much it's costing you to keep your building lit.
Yeah.
But so just to answer your question, when the restart begins and the ink is dried, Central Services goes into action on a lot of different ways, and they're trying to fold in that particular pre-existing location into the New Life ecosystem.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that involves a lot of different things. And I have more to say about it, but I'll wait because I could talk forever.
Yeah, because I think. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, the Central Service team in the early years, it was a very small core. And as we continued to work with new churches, we sat down and we realized we need some help.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I had appreciated about Pastor Mark was he was a big John Maxwell fan. And the importance of developing the leaders within us was a big thing, at least for me. And so I realized that though my strengths were in administration and keeping a calendar and the audio piece, we needed to put more people on our team. And though I can pick out a postcard and do demographics and things, but we had to work with the pastor and help them understand that wasn't the best use of their time. A lot of these pastors
Expand on that a little bit.
it's just I
Feel free to name drop. Those people that were really.
It was a bit of a challenge, but my job was to keep the calendar and to make sure that event took place. So it wasn't an option to go, oh, sorry, Pastor Mark, we're not going to be able to do that because Pastor so and so wanted to go, whatever. And so it was really neat because being able to kind of work with these pastors and kind of help them understand why the team, the Central Service team, was so important was to help them succeed, with this event type thing. And it was neat just working with all of these different people, even within their congregation, and to be able to see, hey, who do you have in your congregation? Sure, you might only be 15 people or 20 people or whatever, but I'm sure there's people in here that have gifting and talents that could help us to be able to create this opening type thing.
What are some of those things that you learned? Obviously you know where the team's at right now and how they're able to move quickly. When we have a restart, this team is moving quickly. It can seem aggressive because you have more people on staff who are all working towards a common goal. But back then it was like 4 people, maybe 3 people working towards that common goal, and there was a lot more on your plate. What were some of the things that you guys learned? If you can recount a story, I'm not sure if there's something that comes to mind through one of the 15 restarts that you've done,
Was some of these pastors who just thought that they can just do it by themselves. And is helping, not to disrespect that pastor, but helping them understand why am I here and what is the role, and I'm here to help you and your church to succeed.
Yeah.
So let us do what we know how to do.
Yeah.
And which was difficult for some pastors because they, thought
It was never
like this.
difficult for you though.
to
I'm kidding,
to tell
you're-
people. Well, I learned under Pastor Mark, so
I got
so
Vilma
I'm part of the
always-
1986 team.
Yeah, Vilma, I'm right there with you. Vilma graciously was able to, hats off to you. Pastors
praise God.
pastors are leaders, and very few pastors that I've met are real kind of timid, kind of quiet, and just kind of let you run the roost. They're going to have their own ideas. They're gonna
Entrepreneur.
They're going to have, they're just, but Vilma was able to stand up to those guys and say, I never was one of those people.
No,
Of course
you
not.
weren't.
But she was able to stand up to us.
Yeah.
And say, no, we need to go in this direction, and even sometimes have a strong voice and kind of get on her tippy toes a little bit and say, and in your face and say, this is the way we need to do it.
Yeah.
And she handled that, and she was doing it when we didn't have everything. We didn't have a lot of experience, so we were all learning and growing. None of us have a benchmark to
There's
kind of
no written process.
Right,
at
there's
that
no
point.
written. Now we have a little bit more experience, but hats off to Vilma, because
Praise
there was a
God.
lot of times where she had to really step up, and but we were. It's not all restarts are hard work.
Yeah, they are.
Period. And everybody, all hands have to be on deck to make it happen.
Yeah.
And be willing to be flexible and let the other person do what they do well.
Yeah.
And that was the big thing with some Some
Right.
pastors just, you know, I have a audio engineering background and theater background and stuff, and some pastors just, you know, the little things, like we wasted too much time on the little things. I'm like, really? Direct boxes? It doesn't matter what brand, let's just go. And, you know, because we had a budget to keep, you know, and
Right,
Pastor
that's
Mark was
right.
very much, you know, he was the budget guy, and
Right.
we couldn't exceed.
And let me
even-
just make a
Oh, on the
comment here.
budget?
So, on the budget, yeah, for the budget, right? So we say we had a budget, right?
Sorta.
In the early days, we didn't have a budget. So for
We had a
those of you
number.
guys out
Let's
we
talk
had
there,
a
about
number.
that.
We had a
Let's talk
number. We had a number,
for
sort
those
of.
of you guys out there in Radio Land that are throwing $500,000 towards a restart, I'm like, whew, you know, we could do about 20 on that
Oh, yeah.
number. And
Absolutely.
I'm not bragging. I'm just saying in the
No.
early days, we didn't have a plan. We didn't have a budget. We didn't, you know, and we've kind of grown and learned. And that goes back
Yeah.
to a previous podcast of when we talked about that. But those budgets were tight because there really wasn't a budget.
How many of our restarts do you think we did a restart for less than 10,000?
Well, we learned pretty quick. The learning curve had to be fast.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, I would say probably around 3
Okay.
3 or 4 before we started to really start tucking some money away and coming up with a process and a system to fund the church planting.
What would you say, like, you know, because obviously it's always been growing, and I'm sure 5 years from now we'll make some tweaks to adjust to the context and the times that we're in. But you know, once you guys started saving money, what was that, like, that next number for a restart? What was it? Past free,
Well,
above free for
it
nothing.
was about 50,000.
Okay.
And it stayed at, well,
It's-
we bumped it up to 55,000 now.
Yeah.
And so that's still a very low number.
That's incredibly low.
Incredibly low. But there's also, you know, the pastor has an option to say one location might have more work that needs to be done. They could also get an internal loan from New Life, okay, to help. So you have the 55,000, which is basically a gift to get the restart up and running. It's
Yeah.
a tight
It's
budget.
more for
It's
the
not-
event.
Yeah, mainly gearing up towards the
Yeah.
grand opening, but there's
The
a lot of
relaunch,
other
yeah.
the relaunch, the grand opening. But there's some other fees in
Like
there.
signs, like you got to get signs.
Signage.
new
Well, that was all
signage.
in there. It was amazing, the
Signage,
breakdown.
promotion,
Yeah, kids ministry.
kids ministry, painting, architecture,
Sound
you name
equipment.
it, lawyer fees, all
Yeah.
that. And so we still do it for about 55,000, but a lot of times a location may want to do some more, and so they may have to get a loan. But we don't want to real cautious about that because we don't want to weigh that new location down with a lot of bills
No.
because anything over the 55,000 goes back and you're paying it back. So you know that's part of that, but.
Yeah.
It always added a little bit stretch. So we've cut our teeth, and I think it's been one of the reasons why we've been successful in urban America, Chicagoland in particular, is because we've cut our teeth on a tight budget. I mean, we've had back in the '80s. I mean, the budget was $25,000 for the year, for the year.
Yeah.
And so we've had to learn to kind of navigate through it, and God bless us by allowing us the privilege of having to cut our teeth, so to speak, with tight budgets.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that kind of precedent is still kept on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think speaking into the budget piece was one of the things that I remember was we had to create a standard. What is our standard from projection to audio to kids ministry? And so, you know, did we want the latest bells and whistles? Sure, but did that mean that you had to do that for the restart? No,
Yeah.
it didn't. And so we had to create this list, and it was a standard list. This is the kind of keyboard. These are the kind of direct boxes, the mic cables, you know, projectors versus TVs.
Because it was like a
now.
turnkey
3M
price.
projector.
Absolutely,
You could afford it.
it had to be a turnkey, and then also the other thing that we learned over the years was if you have the same type of equipment, then anyone from any other location's team can go to that location and help them,
Yeah.
which was a big thing.
Yeah.
And we also added some kind of training for the audio video piece because we learned that not everyone has audio video people in their congregation. And in the beginning, I think it was the first one, we didn't think about that, and then we thought, oh no, we need to.
So we got this rocket ship soundboard.
Yeah.
And it's
We
like
did.
nobody knows how to run it except
Nobody
for
knows
Vilma.
it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
or like I go, well, I can't. Okay, I need to find somebody to do that. You know, but that was, I think that was
So
a big
Vilma was at
piece.
every grand opening
Yeah.
too. You
It
know?
was
Yeah.
so exciting. I remember one. Here's the story. I remember one grand opening before Wi-Fi hotspots and everything. Where Kent's like, I wasn't born yet.
Oh.
The IT guy had no lie, he had some antennas like from old TV rabbit antennas, sticking out of the back window to be able to, because we were trying to view it online. I don't know what we were thinking, and we just said, wouldn't it be cool if that another location can get on the internet and watch it? We're like, oh, okay. And so we tried it, and it was hilarious because the guy was in the back and trying
Moving
to get
into the future.
it was. Yeah. So if you can imagine every location when we first started, Pastor Mark always wanted to, let's listen in on what's happening at some point.
Yeah,
and only the first few. And it was exciting for the congregation that wasn't able to go to that grand opening and stuff. But those early years were hilarious.
Yeah.
It's
What a
fun stuff.
blessing.
Yeah, so I mean that's a good question. You know, we're talking about budgets and then the power of a team. You know, and for restarts, I would think about this. That money so a restart happens and it's $55,000 that is given to that pastor, that location pastor for that restart, and that there's legal fees and there's a whole bunch of stuff that's kind of already fixed, right? But then there's some other I guess money in that for discretionary things like signage or other things, equipment. And you said that's when we say a gift, what do we mean by that? And is that a loan or a gift? How does that?
It's actually a gift. It doesn't have to be paid back. But anything above and beyond that. So here's the thing: if you're a church that's considering to do a restart, and there's funding available, you know, you may have 20,000, you may have nothing, you may have 100,000, who knows. I would keep that. I would use that money as part of the restart. So so that you can go into this, you can go into the restart with 150,000 or 155,000, not say, oh, we're just going to spend this money, we're just going to give it all away. No, you have a church that needs help. And so when New Life comes in, it's a heavy lift. I mean, we're coming into a location that is very few people that are attending. It's in a tough situation. There's bills that still need to be paid. And so what we're doing is we're saying, we're coming into this thing with a heavy lift, and what we're asking you to do is also to participate financially so that we can have the most robust restart possible.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a big part. But I have another key point that I think that, if it's okay, Eric, I'd like to share about Central Services that a lot of folks don't realize that Central Services brings to the restart arena that has been something fairly new, maybe within the last 10 years, but it's grown more and more, is the fact that we give every pastor a coach. So he comes in with a veteran coach, a guy that's experienced, a guy that can give them the advice that he needs, so he's not all alone at that location. And so we have a coaching network that helps that pastor navigate through, so he's not all by himself. And that is really a part of the Central Services team. Yeah. So there's a whole coaching network that's now even growing more to regional areas, and we're going into 2022 with that idea and that plan. But again, you have to look at that key as part of Central Services.
Yeah, so that's so big picture, right? We have Central Services where the location pastor has a team that's working on legal matters, right? The constitution from the church that's being restarted, and how New Life is going to be really we're marrying, right? We're merging with that church, keeping the existing church name as well as starting off New Life Community Church, that location. You got a communications director, you got a launch coordinator, you got accounts payable, accounts receivable, you got HR, you got what am I missing?
Website.
IT, yeah. So I mean,
think about that for a minute. I mean, you've ever seen some of these? I mean, I'm just going to be honest here. Some of these restart churches, you look at their website and it's still from like 1960.
Yeah.
Exaggeration intended, you know, but it's just like, oh my goodness, I don't have to worry about a high quality website. That's part of Central Services.
Yeah.
I don't have to, I can come in. So in other words, we have this big church, all the benefits of the big church that's getting funneled down into a little location that might have only 20 people on the grand opening or 20 people that start. That's huge. I mean, to have a cool app.
That's what I was going to say.
You know what I'm saying?
What church that has 50 people has their own app?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we even got merch.
Yeah.
We got hats and sweatshirts. And in other
look
words,
good.
there's a big benefit to, you got this big church mentality, big church benefit coming into a small church. But, you have to tip your hat off to Central Services and that kind of stuff. And, there's a lot of different things that benefit us because we've been in Chicago for 30 some odd years.
Yeah.
And but a lot of that is tied into the Central.
And that's part of the
Services team.
innovation, right, Kent? We would say from the days when Vilma and 3 other people were doing this to now you being on a team, 6 years ago you came to the team? So in 6 years, 7 years ago, you've probably seen tremendous growth in this team.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things Pastor John just reminded me of too, those things are important because they create momentum.
Yes.
And that's one of the biggest things I think, Vilma and I, as we're working with these pastors and these launches, is you need to build that momentum, leading up to that grand opening. There has to be things, moving and taking place. There has to be excitement, energy. The team has to be rallied together, trained, equipped.
Yeah.
And so, all those things, it's like, as much as we can pack in there to give that it literally is like a rocket ship, launching off.
Yeah.
Takes so much energy. Once it's launched, it pretty much goes, forward. Minor
flying in space
minor
all
adjustments
alone.
here and there, but so much does go into that launch and getting that initial lift off.
Yeah, absolutely. And momentum's so key, and that's really what a restart location needs. It needs an infusion of momentum.
Yeah.
Because when you have momentum in the house, it's like, okay, we're not going to argue about the color of the carpeting or whether we're taking pews out and putting chairs, and that just doesn't
Something
matter.
Chuck said earlier when we were talking about the naysayers, he says, well, in the beginning days, when New Life came in, we started seeing an increase of attendance. And it was hard for the naysayers to say anything when you saw the fruit of people's lives being reached, right?
That's right.
So the momentum, really, that infusion of momentum and for good, really does play a huge part. And Central Service is undoubtedly a huge factor in making that happen.
Yeah.
And going back to the coaching benefit in a day and age where a lot of pastors are discouraged, the Central Services coach, he helps with spiritual health also.
Yeah.
So that pastor's not all by himself, man.
Right.
He's got a coach that helps him through the spiritual health arena, but also helps him through what we call BTC coaches, breakthrough ceilings. So he helps him with a lot of different goals to break through different ceilings, that he may be hitting. Mm-hmm. So again, I think that's an important key to highlight. Mm-hmm. But let's not also forget human resources.
Yeah.
You're not all by yourself out there hiring somebody.
Oh, man.
You've got Irene, who loves to interview people, right, Irene? No,
Yeah.
But Irene does a great job with human resources, and that's a lot of energy. You may not see things the way she sees it, but this is a very professional approach to human resources that is a big asset, a big benefit to a location pastor.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the other pluses to a Central Services team in the early years, one of the things that Pastor Mark did was he always made sure that our entire team, all 4 of us, would go to the new location and meet people so that they can put faces to the name New Life Community Church, which I think is important. Because if it's only the pastor going by himself, then it's just him. But if it's the pastor and whoever else is working with him to get to know these folks, and meeting Chuck and meeting his wife and CB and the rest of the folks from New Life Lakeview was a huge blessing.
Yeah.
So they didn't only see the pastor of New Life, but they also saw the team as excited as the pastor was to partner with this new
So
location.
let me ask this question, if I could, for you, Kent, on this. So I joined, I finally agreed to do a restart with New Life, and I'm really happy. I watched this podcast. I said, wow, what a blessing to have all these Central Services blessings. So does that mean Central Services is going to provide for me a worship leader, and a drummer, and a couple singers, and a children's ministry director, and a sound tech people? Am I going to get all that benefit too? Or do I have to, as a pastor, kind of find those people on my own?
Yeah, so I have actually, it's a kind of a worksheet, and it shows the current location, who's the worship leader at this location, who's the tech leader, children's ministry, et cetera. And then we have the new location, and that column's blank to begin with. So one of the things that we would start talking through is, where are these pieces? Do you have a worship leader, in training? Do you have a children's ministry leader who, you can start, equipping and preparing for that launch and could transition in that role. And we find in, then some of the holes, some of the gaps.
Right.
And that's where we then start reaching out to other locations or our kind of family of churches, and reaching out and seeing if, we have those people within our midst, All that to say, no. We don't just grow a worship leader
Good answer,
in 3 months and have them ready to go. But it's amazing to see how God provides those people through the process. Sometimes it's in the last minute. Sometimes it's just for a season, to help get that launch going. And again, as that momentum's happening, the people begin to step up. But it's been neat to see. I don't know if we have them planned for one of the episodes, but Pastor Chewy Garcia, for example, he was just an usher greeter, at one point at New Life Midway. And now he's one of our location pastors. And I've seen that happen multiple times. Somebody that's just kind of serving real low key at their current location, but all of a sudden there's a need. There's a vacancy of, and you create that space for them and they step up to it and they really do shine, in that location.
Boy, that's a whole nother discussion on
Yeah.
spiritual leadership.
Yeah.
Creating spaces, and
Yeah.
just a lot of pastors don't think in those terms. But if you're intentional about creating vacancies, that's how you raise leaders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But isn't the worship initiative that you're doing, Eric, a part of Central Services in a way?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So some of the costs that you incur on that comes out of the Central Services.
There's few things that when you do a restart or like most either building a building or planting a new church, the first thing that gets cut is usually the tech and AV, like that budget.
Yeah.
And then nobody even thought about who's going to lead worship.
Right.
That's not even a thought.
Yeah.
Right. And so we move into these spaces and these new opportunities like, oh, wait, how are we going to do this? Oh, yeah. And it's kind of like an afterthought, like, shoot first, think later,
Yeah.
And so we've learned over the years. And so we're about to start our 4th season in January of 2022 of the Worship Leader Residency. And that was birthed from the desire to raise up leaders for these launches. Whether it's a restart or just a launch from New Life, because New Life, we had the charge at every location, right? We want to see them be able to plant the church, right? It's the goal. But if we do that, if we were to be able to successfully do that, we would need leaders. And so the Worship Leader Residency came from that desire to help location pastors think through the launch of their next location, right? Think of it like having a baby, right? If you're going to have a baby, you want to buy a crib, right? You want to buy a car seat. You want to buy clothes. You definitely want to buy diapers, if you're smart, and so helping them think through the worship leader and being able to prepare
and there's
for
not
that.
a ton of costs there, but there is a direct line relationship between Central Services and the Worship Residency.
Yeah.
There's a direct line relationship between Central Services and the Women's Encounter Retreat and the Men's Encounter Retreat and the Engage Conference and every all-church event that we do. So that when you think about, the ratio, the budget ratio of 80-20, we could talk about that maybe.
Yeah.
You got to understand and think through all the different benefits of a big church, the big church environment that's blessing and helping your location to go to a whole nother level. Incremental growth, more rapid than your average, simply because we have a big church mentality that has a central service department. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's about 9 people that we staff in there.
Yeah.
Imagine the process. It's hard enough for your location to count the offering effectively, right?
Yeah, that's true. We
Okay.
became more intentional.
But think about this,
Yeah.
processing offerings from 20 some odd locations every week.
It's a
Yeah.
huge
Central
undertaking.
Service.
That's
does
like
that.
a mammoth job.
Yeah.
Right.
And we get a report on Tuesday when it's completed. So it comes in on Monday, it's done by Tuesday. It's
Yeah.
Yep.
That is
That's
powerful. It raises up another question too, and you guys speak to this. If the launch money, right, or the $55,000 is a gift, then why is it that a location then starts giving towards central missions? How does that work? Why do we do that? What does that go towards?
Well, that's the beauty of it. Is it's a ongoing fund, so to speak. We're replenishing that fund. Every location has a portion of their budget.
That's the 80-20
The 80-20. So 10% goes to central services, 10% goes to missions, and part of that missions it's divided in 5 to 5 approximately towards home missions or church planting, and then another towards international missions. So really, Central Services is living off a 10% budget, which to me, frankly speaking, is really low.
So 9 staff members on a 10% budget.
Yeah, plus everything else that we've been talking about. So now you kind of begin to get an idea. Now try to raise that 10%, which is it should be raised probably to 70, what would be 70-30, right? Try to raise that up 10 more percent. Now I'm a location pastor. I'm not talking necessarily as a location pastor right now, 'cause that's 10% out of my budget, but I'm just saying realistically, when you start to think of it in those terms and start to think movement, you have to have fluidity. There has to be money.
Right.
To make the project work, to make it
Yeah.
run. And that's why we ask every location to replenish, so that the church planting fund is always constantly replenished. We learned that way back, like on the second or third restart, that we have to have a fund that everybody's contributing to in order to keep it always there, so that we can say yes to every possibility that it seems like God is opening the door for.
Right.
So now we have every location contributes back right away to that.
And not just towards that, but also we ask every location to have a reserve fund as well for their specific location, which is another
Big
safeguard.
blessing, which is another initiative that came from Central Services when we started seeing, because we keep a pulse on every location. Every location has an autonomous budget. They have to be self-sustaining. And if they're not, then we have to figure out why they're not and how can we help them to get there.
Yeah.
So what we did is we saw, wow, a lot of these locations are not doing as well as they could be doing, and that none of them had really a reserve fund. So that's when we stepped in, Central Services stepped in and said, you guys have to have a reserve fund. You have to save 3 months worth of expenses in the bank as a reserve fund that you can't touch, so that when crisis hits, we're able to tap into that reserve fund. And now I can proudly say that every one of our locations is in the green and has been in the green for a while. Some may, because of COVID, dip into the yellow, but none are in the red.
Yeah.
And that's, again, part of the whole Central Services piece
Yeah.
that's there. So
Yeah.
That's huge. That's huge.
Yep.
it is.
Kent, talk to us about, Central Services today and, the latest restart. What was the latest restart we did? I don't even know.
It's Pastor Danny, East Humboldt Park.
Oh, yeah, East Humboldt Park. Yeah.
Just earlier this year.
So there was a ton of renovation in that building too, right?
Yes.
And you were there for all of it.
Pastor Danny was there for all of it. I was there for some of it, but
So he launches this church, right? It restarts it, and there's the budget, there's the Power Central Services, and then he launched. I mean, he's already been launched. Is he just kind of left in orbit now, and the thrusters have fallen off, and Central Services no longer with him? What's the relationship past the launch?
yeah. So his grand opening was Easter, and so launched and
In the middle of COVID.
In the middle of COVID.
Yeah.
Easter.
We were planting churches in the middle of COVID.
which is a
and
totally
his
new
church
thing.
is taking
but-
off like a rocket ship.
But yeah, I think that's the beautiful thing about our model is that, like we've been saying, this is it's like having a baby, but they're coming into a family, and so we don't just leave them, part of what Vilma and I do through working with the pastor for the launch, it's kind of like you're in the trenches with them, and you really forge this relationship with them, and you really form this trust with them,
Right.
And so as they kind of, grow and expand and have needs and stuff comes up, their first maybe baptisms, they need a baptism tub because we're going to get one in the budget this year, so they make a call and we help them find a baptism tub, or they want to do an outreach, for the fall, or their first Christmas, in their location. What are we going to do? So we form that relationship with them through the launch process, and we have that kind of trust, I think, so that as they go forward, they have this sort of network and this family of people that they can reach out to and call upon for help. Specifically, I'd say, what Pastor John a little bit was getting at, our Central Services, we track a lot of metrics and numbers for our locations. So, financial tracking, but also baptisms and small groups, and I'm trying to think what else we track.
Tithes, of course.
But there's
Attendance.
there's sort of these health metrics, and so you can see the trajectory, is the location growing? Are they going down? Are there things, maybe happening there? The coach is involved with that as well. That kind of keeps a pulse on it. And so, I would say just like a child, we want to make sure they're growing up, strong and healthy and maturing. And if there's something, happening, kind of take them to the doctor,
Yeah.
Dr. John,
Yeah.
specialist, and
Dr. John.
have a checkup and see maybe what's going on if we can help them. So, yeah.
And it sounds great. I mean, it is. We do have a great model, and there's a lot. But just to reiterate, this isn't a sales pitch today, because there's a lot of restarts that we've said no to. Not every restart is for New Life. I mean,
or for the church that's
listening, but maybe you could benefit a little bit from some of the things that we're talking about that you can apply within your own context.
Yeah.
But we always go into every restart situation with a very open hand, and recognizing that this, is this what God wants us to do? Is this what God wants them to do? And of course, every restart, we're looking for an invitation to end. We're not forcing ourselves on anybody, but we get excited, right?
Yeah, we do.
Because it's been a journey. I mean, some of us have been together for three decades or so, and kind of matured through this process. And so, but I think that's a good point. It's a great team. That guy's being invited into a family, but then again, from the initial points of a restart, it's something that it maybe not be for us.
Yeah.
So
I think one of the greatest things I think about Central Services as a location pastor myself, and thinking of the pastor out there who would, or the church that wants to start doing restarts, and they're thinking, oh, we could do this, we could do it ourselves, or we can do these things. And really the power of team is that you don't do everything yourself.
That's right.
You do it with others,
Yeah.
right? You do it with others, and it gives the space. And this is kind of what we were talking about. When you create the space for people who are skilled in specific areas to use their gifts and talents for the kingdom of Jesus, you can do way more.
Right.
You can do way more than what you could do by yourself. When you might be a great preacher, right? You may be a great preacher, and you might be really a great shepherding heart for people, but you're not very organized.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to run into some problems, right? But when you have a team that can come alongside you and isn't just this one and done thing, but it's an ongoing relationship. It's a family, right? You're able to do way, way more. And so this is why we wanted to have you guys on, because there is going to be a church or a pastor who's going to be looking at this like, yeah, we would like to do this. And I think exposing them to and helping them understand, kind of pulling back the curtain to our team, right? And you guys just represent a part of the team, not the whole team, but just letting them see behind the curtain and seeing the struggles that we went through to get to where we're at today, right? Some of the stories, like, working with pastors, right?
Yeah,
and getting them to just do
Yeah.
simple things and not get caught in the weeds, right?
Right.
Man, I'm so thankful for that, I'm so thankful. Or Kent was like, man, I'm here to help you. Quit trying to control everything, right? And like
good.
literally, I get paid to help you,
Use me.
Yeah,
That's right.
And but learning how to work on a team like that could be really maybe challenging in the beginning. But I think we've learned over the years, right? So this isn't like create this and it's going to work perfectly from the start. No, there's challenges. There's things you're going to have to navigate through. But I think the power of a central service team outweighs the challenges you'll have to navigate, because you'll be able to do way more for the kingdom of Jesus. Thinking forward to the location or the church that you might restart in your community down the street, 20 minutes from your current location, and you'll be able to step into a situation like that with a little bit of grit and a little bit of bearing.
Right.
When you get the right people on the right bus, right, in the right seat,
Yeah, right.
that's huge.
Yeah, and I was just thinking as you were talking, Eric, it kind of reminded me, I thought this is a good, important point, is that, restarts are restarts. It's a type of church planting, but there's also the classic church planting.
Yeah.
And a lot of these are parallel. So a lot of what takes place on the restart level is also for our classic church planting, where you develop your core, you find a place to meet, and you have also in that approach, you also have the power of central services. So it's not just for restarts.
Right.
So if you have a vision and a heart to plant a church and join New Life in doing that, understand too that we have the central services team that would be a part of that to help you navigate that classic church plant approach.
Yeah.
So.
And as always, our aim is to package everything that we've learned and give it away so that the listener can take this and use it in their location, in their part of the globe where the church is and where we want it to remain. And so we're always open to conversations. You can reach out to us, you can reach out to us, and we'd love to have a conversation. I know, John, you'd love to have a conversation with some people thinking about reaching people for the kingdom of Jesus,
As long as
right?
you come along with me.
Hey, I'll be there, man. I'll be right there.
And Kent too.
And Central
Kent too.
Services.
And Kent.
Sure.
And Kent. Yeah,
You can call me.
Yes. Well, hey, guys, thanks so much for being here today. I think it's, man, what a great conversation. A lot of times it doesn't seem like the bells and whistles of conversations, all the admin behind the scenes stuff. But, man, when you don't feel that on your shoulders because you built the team that can handle it, that's a good day.
It's a fun.
Right?
It's fun. I don't know. I've always had fun. So when Kent joined the team, I was pretty excited because then I had like a kindred spirit here to be able to kind of work together and understand to kind of work with the. So if I could say anything to the pastor who's listening or the church planter person is understand that we are not here to do things alone.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to allow someone to help you.
Right.
There is a lot of created and talented people within your congregation, and maybe you might only have a handful, but you never know until you ask them, what do you like to do? You may have a worship leader inside your congregation, but you have no idea because they never, stepped forward. So take a minute and take a look around at what you have in your team, and don't, just kind of open yourself up and just kind of go, okay, let me see. You're not an island.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your work as a Central Services team, and I'm speaking to all the Central Services people, thank you.
Yeah.
We love you guys, and we appreciate you. We know that you make a lot of sacrifices. You work hard. There's a lot of frustrations, but thank you. You've made a big difference in expanding the kingdom of God in Chicagoland and beyond. So we show our appreciation. I speak on behalf of all the pastors. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, hey, thanks for watching this episode. We're really glad that you were able to hear this conversation. If this benefits you or you know that it would benefit somebody, please share this podcast with them, to the church or to the friend that you know that would benefit from this. And as always, please subscribe to our channel so you can stay connected to what's happening here as we talk about all things restarts. Thanks.